What happens when a routine celebrity interview suddenly turns into one of the most uncomfortable moments daytime television has seen in years? Nobody in the audience expected the conversation to go off the rails when Hugh Jackman appeared on a live panel discussion and found himself face-to-face with a heated line of questioning from Joy Behar. What started as a light-hearted interview about movies and public life quickly shifted into a tense back and forth that left the host speechless, the audience divided, and social media exploding within minutes. Make sure to subscribe to Talk Show Fallout and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The audience is clapping as Hugh walks out onto the stage smiling, waving toward the crowd while the hosts welcome him to the table. The energy at first feels completely normal. Everyone is laughing, the atmosphere is relaxed, and Hugh looks comfortable as he takes his seat. Joy leans forward first with a grin. You know, every time you come here people lose their minds. The audience laughs loudly while Hugh smiles and shrugs. I appreciate that. It's always good to feel welcome. Another host jumps in. You've had one of the busiest years imaginable. New projects, appearances everywhere, and somehow you still look relaxed. Hugh laughs. I don't know if relaxed is the word my team would use. The audience reacts with more laughter. For the first several minutes, the conversation stays easy. They talk about filming schedules, fan reactions, and balancing work with family life. Hugh answers calmly, joking with the panel and keeping the mood upbeat. Even Joy seems friendly at first, nodding along and occasionally interrupting with playful comments. Then the conversation starts drifting toward celebrity culture and media attention. Joy crosses her arms slightly. You know what fascinates me, though? Celebrities always say they want privacy, but at the same time they live very public lives. The audience quiets a little. Hugh keeps smiling. I think there's a balance. People understand that public work comes with attention, but family is different. Joy tilts her head. But is it really different anymore? I mean, social media changed everything. Another host quickly jumps in. That's true for everybody now, though. Joy keeps going. No, but seriously, people become invested because celebrities invite them into their lives. Then suddenly there are boundaries after years of publicity. A few audience members clap while others stay silent. Hugh's expression changes slightly. Not angry, just more focused now. I think there's a difference between sharing moments and feeling entitled to someone's personal life. Joy responds immediately. But people make careers out of attention. The tension becomes noticeable for the first time. One of the other hosts gives a nervous laugh and tries steering the conversation elsewhere. Well, speaking of attention, your latest project has everybody talking. But Joy cuts back in before Hugh can answer. No, because I think this is interesting. Fans feel manipulated sometimes. The audience reacts with scattered murmurs. Hugh stays calm. Manipulated. Joy nods. Sure. Public figures share what benefits them publicly, but when difficult questions come up suddenly, it's off limits. The room gets quieter. Hugh leans back slightly. I don't think protecting your private life means you owe strangers every detail. There's applause from part of the audience. Joy raises an eyebrow. Strangers helped make you famous. Another host immediately jumps in. Okay, this got serious fast. The crowd laughs nervously. Hugh smiles politely, but now there's obvious tension in his voice. I've always respected audiences. Always. But respect should go both ways. That line gets loud applause. Joy doesn't back off. But isn't it fair for people to ask questions when public images don't match reality? The audience reacts with louder murmurs now. Hugh pauses before answering. I think people should be careful assuming they know someone's reality based on headlines. Joy replies, sometimes headlines come from the celebrity camp itself. One of the hosts quietly says, oh boy. The audience laughs awkwardly. Hugh keeps eye contact with Joy now. I'm happy to discuss my work, my career, even criticism. But I think there's a point where questioning becomes less about curiosity and more about provocation. That line gets another big audience reaction. Joy folds her hands. You think I'm provoking you? Hugh answers carefully. I think you're trying very hard to make this personal. The crowd reacts instantly with loud oaths. One host covers her mouth while laughing nervously. Another shakes her head as if trying to calm things down before it escalates further. Joy smiles tightly. I ask direct questions. That's my job. Hugh nods once. And answering respectfully is mine. For a second, the entire table goes silent. Then the audience applauds loudly. Joy looks toward the crowd and gives a sarcastic smile. Well, clearly he's winning the audience today. Hugh chuckles softly. I don't think this should be about winning. That response actually earns him even louder applause. One host tries shifting the energy. Let's talk about the movie before we all need a commercial break. The audience laughs hard at that. Hugh finally relaxes slightly again. That sounds safer. Joy smirks. Depends what questions I ask. More nervous laughter. The conversation moves briefly toward his latest film. Hugh discusses training, filming challenges, and working with younger actors. The audience settles down again, and for a moment it feels like the tension has passed. But then Joy circles back unexpectedly. You've had this reputation for years as one of the nicest guys in Hollywood. Hugh smiles politely. That's kind to say. Joy shrugs. Some people say that image is too polished. A noticeable reaction moves through the crowd again. Another host immediately says, Joy. But Joy continues. No, I'm serious. People online say celebrities build brands around being the nice guy. Hugh exhales slowly through a smile. People online say a lot of things. The audience laughs loudly. Joy presses again. Does it bother you when people question authenticity? Hugh answers calmly. Not really. I can't control. Opinions. Joy leans in. But you clearly care. Hugh tilts his head slightly. Everybody cares when assumptions become disrespectful. There's another quiet pause. Then Joy says something that visibly changes the atmosphere. Well, some people think you avoid difficult conversations because maintaining the image matters more. A few audience members gasp quietly. Even the other hosts look uncomfortable now. Hugh's smile fades completely for the first time. He responds evenly. That's an interesting assumption. Joy shrugs again. It's a public conversation. Hugh nods slowly. There's a difference between public conversation and assigning motives to someone you don't know. The audience applauds again. Joy interrupts before the applause fully ends. See, this is what happens. The second someone challenges the narrative, celebrities become defensive. Hugh finally leans forward. No, he says firmly. What happens is sometimes interviewers mistake confrontation for insight. The audience erupts immediately. Several people clap loudly while others shout in surprise. One host literally leans back in her chair saying, Okay, wow. Joy's expression tightens. You think I'm confrontational? Hugh answers instantly. I think you came into this conversation wanting a headline instead of a discussion. The crowd reacts even louder now. Joy laughs sarcastically. Trust me, I don't need headlines from actors. Hugh keeps his composure. Then maybe we can stop trying to create one. The tension at the table becomes impossible to ignore. Even the audience seems unsure whether to clap or stay quiet. Another host quickly jumps in. All right, we're taking a breath because this is live television. The audience laughs again, though the nervousness is obvious. Hugh smiles politely toward the other hosts, trying to ease the mood. But Joy isn't done. No, because I think viewers appreciate honesty, she says. Too many celebrity interviews are rehearsed. Hugh nods once. Honesty is important. Respect is too. Joy replies, respect doesn't mean avoiding hard questions. Hugh responds calmly but sharply. Hard questions are fine. Loaded questions are different. The audience gives another loud reaction. Now even people in the crowd are visibly whispering to each other. One host turns toward Hugh. Do you feel celebrities get unfairly judged now compared to years ago? Hugh takes a second before answering. I think people forget public figures are still human beings. Criticism comes with the job. That's fair. But there's a growing culture where provoking someone becomes entertainment. The audience claps. Joy immediately fires back. Or maybe audiences are tired of polished answers. Hugh looks directly at her. Maybe audiences are tired of negativity pretending to be authenticity. The audience explodes with applause and shocked reactions as the camera cuts across the table, showing stunned expressions from the other hosts. The applause keeps going longer than anyone at the table expected. Some people in the audience are standing now, while others look completely stunned by how direct the exchange has become. One of the producers off camera can be seen motioning for the hosts to move things forward, but the tension sitting at the table is impossible to ignore. Joy gives a short laugh while shaking her head. Negativity. Now I'm negative because I ask questions. Hugh stays calm, though his tone is firmer now than it was earlier. No. I said there's a difference between asking questions and trying to corner somebody. Another loud audience reaction breaks out immediately. One host jumps in quickly. Okay, everybody breathe. The crowd laughs nervously again. Joy turns toward the audience. Interesting how everyone suddenly becomes protective when a celebrity pushes back. A few people clap, but the reaction is mixed this time. Hugh folds his hands together on the table. Nobody needs to protect me. I'm just answering you honestly. Joy responds immediately. You're answering selectively. Another host quietly mutters, this is getting intense. Hugh hears it and smiles briefly. Apparently, the audience laughs again, easing the tension for half a second. But Joy keeps pressing forward. Look, I think viewers are smarter than celebrities sometimes give them credit for. People can tell when answers are polished. Hugh nods slightly. And people can also tell when someone's trying very hard to create conflict. The audience reacts loudly again. Joy leans back in her chair with crossed arms. You really think I'm trying to create conflict? Hugh answers carefully. I think you decided what kind of interview this would be before I even sat down. The audience lets out another wave of shocked reactions. One of the co-hosts looks toward the cameras with a nervous smile. Well, this is definitely live television. The crowd bursts into laughter again. Joy points toward Hugh. See, this is exactly what I mean. The second things get uncomfortable, suddenly the interviewer becomes the villain. Hugh responds without raising his voice. Nobody said villain. But asking leading questions and then accusing someone of being defensive when they respond isn't exactly neutral. More applause. Joy shakes her head slowly. Actors are very good with words. Hugh smiles slightly. Talk show hosts are too. That line gets one of the biggest reactions yet. Even one of the other hosts starts laughing uncontrollably while covering her face. Joy smirks, but the irritation is becoming more visible now. You know what your problem is? The audience immediately goes quiet. Another host whispers, oh no. Joy continues. Your public image is so controlled that anytime someone disrupts it, you push back hard. Hugh stares at her for a second before answering. Actually, my issue is when conversations stop being genuine and start becoming performative. The audience erupts again. Several people clap loudly while others shout in surprise. Joy looks genuinely caught off guard for the first time. Performative, she repeats. Hugh nods. Yes. There's a difference between wanting an honest discussion and trying to manufacture tension because it plays well online. The room gets noticeably louder. One audience member actually yells, tell her. The hosts immediately try calming the crowd down. All right, everybody, relax. Joy looks toward the audience with visible frustration now. It's funny watching people cheer for celebrities, defending themselves against basic questions. Hugh replies instantly. I don't mind questions. I mind assumptions dressed up as facts. Another huge audience reaction follows. The co-host sitting beside Joy tries stepping in diplomatically. Maybe part of the issue now is that celebrity culture and media culture feed off each other. Hugh nods appreciatively toward her. Exactly. And sometimes the loudest moments become the only moments people remember. Joy interrupts again. Because they reveal something real. Hugh turns back toward her. Do they? Or do they just create clips? The audience practically explodes again. One of the hosts throws her hands in the air laughing. Okay, he came prepared today. Joy smiles sarcastically. Oh, he definitely did. Hugh laughs softly. No, actually I thought we were here to talk about movies. That line gets another strong reaction from the crowd. Joy tilts her head. You think actors should only get comfortable questions? Hugh immediately shakes his head. Not at all. But there's a difference between accountability and baiting someone. Joy fires back. That word again. Because it matters, Hugh says. People can feel intent. Audiences are smarter than we sometimes think. The audience applauds loudly. Joy glances toward the producers off camera, and then back at Hugh. You know, what's interesting is you're very careful not to actually answer the substance of what I'm saying. Hugh looks confused for a second. What exactly haven't I answered? Joy leans forward. The idea that celebrities actively build narratives about themselves and then reject scrutiny when those narratives are challenged. Hugh nods slowly. Every public figure has a public image, including television hosts. The audience reaction hits instantly. Joy raises her eyebrows. Now you're comparing actors to journalists? One host quietly says under her breath, this is unbelievable. Hugh answers calmly. I'm comparing public-facing careers. Everyone in media shapes perception to some degree. Joy laughs sharply. Oh, please. Actors literally rehearse emotions for a living. Hugh smiles politely. And television personalities know how to provoke reactions. The audience screams with laughter and applause. Even the other hosts can't hide their reactions anymore. One of them says, "I need popcorn for this conversation." Joy points toward Hugh again. "See? That right there. You keep trying to turn this around on me." Hugh responds immediately. "Because this stopped being an interview 10 minutes ago." That line lands hard with the audience. Joy looks briefly speechless before answering. "Maybe because you got uncomfortable." Hugh pauses before speaking again. "No," he says calmly, "because there's a point where discussion becomes personal and unproductive." The room quiets slightly. One host finally attempts steering the conversation elsewhere. "Let's pivot for a second because people online have actually praised Hugh for staying grounded despite decades of fame." Joy interrupts immediately. "And people online criticize him too." The host sighs visibly. Hugh chuckles softly. "I'm aware." Joy presses on. "Does criticism bother you more now than earlier in your career?" Hugh thinks for a second. "Honestly, criticism doesn't bother me nearly as much as cynicism." Joy responds quickly. "What you call cynicism, other people call honesty." Hugh nods once. "Sometimes. Other times it's just negativity with better branding." The audience absolutely loses it again. Several hosts laugh out loud while Joy stares at Hugh in disbelief. "You really rehearsed these lines, didn't you?" she asks sarcastically. Hugh laughs. "No, I just believe words matter." Joy shakes her head. Convenient answer. One of the co-hosts finally speaks more firmly. "I actually think he's making a fair point." The audience applauds. Joy turns toward her. "Of course you do." The co-host shrugs carefully. "No, seriously. There's a line between tough interviewing and trying to get a reaction." Joy immediately responds. "So now I'm trying to get reactions for television?" Nobody answers right away. That silence alone changes the atmosphere. The audience notices it too. Hugh finally breaks the pause. "Look, live television naturally creates pressure. I understand that. But sometimes conversations work better when both people are actually listening instead of waiting to land a moment." The audience applauds again, though this time it's calmer. Joy looks at him carefully now, almost studying him differently. "You think I'm not listening?" Hugh answers honestly. "I think you came into this wanting conflict because conflict trends." The audience reacts loudly again. Joy laughs sharply. "You know what trends more? Celebrities acting above criticism." Hugh responds immediately. "Criticism is fine. But treating every conversation like a courtroom cross-examination gets exhausting for audiences too." Now even more people clap. One audience member loudly says, "Facts." The hosts laugh nervously again. Joy looks toward the crowd. "Apparently we've got Hugh Jackman fan club tonight." Hugh smiles slightly. "Or maybe people are tired of conversations becoming hostile for entertainment." That statement shifts the mood noticeably. For the first time, even some audience members who had been cheering grow quieter. One host softly says, "That's actually true across media now." Joy exhales and leans back again. "So now this is my fault personally?" Hugh shakes his head. "No. I think it's become part of television culture in general." The audience listens closely now. Hugh continues calmly. "People reward outrage. Clips spread faster when someone gets embarrassed or attacked. And eventually normal conversations disappear because everyone's chasing viral moments." The room becomes much quieter than before. Even Joy doesn't interrupt immediately. One co-host nods slowly. "That's honestly a bigger conversation than celebrity interviews." Hugh agrees. "Exactly." Joy finally responds again, though less aggressively this time. "But conflict has always existed on talk shows." Hugh nods. "Sure. Debate is healthy. But debate and hostility aren't the same thing." The audience applauds again. Joy glances toward the crowd before speaking more carefully. "You really think audiences prefer calmer conversations?" Hugh smiles slightly. "I think audiences prefer authenticity. Real authenticity. Not manufactured tension." The crowd reacts again immediately. One host laughs quietly. He keeps coming back to that word. Hugh shrugs. "Because I think people feel it when something stops being real." Joy looks at him silently for a few seconds. Then she says something that instantly changes the atmosphere again. "So you think I'm fake?" The audience reacts immediately with loud gasps and nervous laughter. Several people at the table shift in their seats because everyone can feel the conversation moving into even more dangerous territory. One of the co-hosts quietly whispers, "Oh boy," while another reaches for her coffee mug like she suddenly wants to disappear from the discussion entirely. Hugh stays calm, but he takes a noticeable pause before answering. "I didn't say that." Joy folds her arms tightly. You implied it. Hugh shakes his head slightly. No, I said television sometimes rewards conflict over conversation. Joy cuts in immediately. And you think I represent that? Hugh keeps his voice steady. I think sometimes the pressure to create strong moments changes how people communicate on air. The audience murmurs again. Joy leans forward. That's a very polished way of avoiding the question. A few audience members clap while others groan at the tension continuing. Hugh smiles faintly. You see avoidance. I see nuance. That line gets another loud audience reaction. One host laughs nervously. This may be the most intense interview we've had in months. The crowd applauds at that. Joy looks toward the audience. It's funny because people only enjoy tension when they agree with the guest. Hugh responds immediately. I don't think this is about sides. Joy turns back toward him quickly. Everything becomes sides now. Hugh nods once. Exactly. That's part of the problem. For a second there's an unusual pause where neither of them speaks. The audience goes quieter too, almost waiting to see who breaks first. Finally, one of the co-hosts tries redirecting the discussion again. This actually connects to something bigger happening culturally. People feel exhausted by constant outrage. Joy sighs. Everybody says that while still consuming it. Hugh nods. True. But media also shapes behavior. Joy laughs softly. Now you're giving lectures about media? Hugh smiles politely. No lecture. Just observation. Joy shakes her head. You actors always want to sound above the system while benefiting from it. The audience reacts loudly again. Hugh immediately answers. I never said I'm above it. Joy interrupts. But you're criticizing it. Because participating in something doesn't mean you can't criticize unhealthy parts of it, Hugh replies calmly. The audience applauds hard at that response. One host quietly mutters, that's actually fair. Joy notices and gives her a look. You all switched sides very quickly. The host laughs awkwardly. I'm not picking sides. Joy responds sarcastically, sure. Hugh looks toward Joy carefully now. Why does disagreement automatically have to become sides? The audience reacts again. Joy answers instantly. Because public conversations are competitive now. Hugh nods slowly. Exactly. And that's exhausting. The room gets quieter again. One of the producers off camera can briefly be heard telling the hosts to wrap the segment soon. But nobody at the table seems ready to let the conversation go. Joy leans back and studies Hugh for a second before speaking again. You know what I think? Hugh gestures politely. Go ahead. I think you're uncomfortable because somebody challenged the nice guy image directly instead of playing along. A few audience members clap cautiously. Hugh doesn't answer immediately this time. That silence alone changes the atmosphere. Joy notices it too. See? Hugh finally speaks calmly. No. I was deciding whether this conversation is still productive. The audience reacts with another wave of oaths. One co-host closes her eyes briefly, like she cannot believe this is still escalating. Joy laughs sharply. That sounds like an exit strategy. Hugh smiles slightly. Not everything is strategy. Joy replies instantly. For celebrities, it usually is. Hugh looks directly at her now. Do you genuinely believe every public interaction is manipulation? Joy pauses for the first time in a while. Well, no, she admits carefully. But public figures absolutely manage perception. Hugh nods. Of course they do. Everybody does. Joy raises an eyebrow. Not everybody has publicists. The audience laughs loudly. Hugh laughs too. Fair point. That moment finally breaks some of the tension. Even Joy smiles briefly. One host jumps in quickly, clearly relieved. Okay, good, human laughter. We're making progress. The audience claps and laughs again. But the calmer mood only lasts a few seconds before Joy circles back once more. Still, she says, you haven't really denied building a public persona. Hugh answers honestly. Every person presents different versions of themselves in different environments. Joy immediately says, that sounds calculated. Hugh shakes his head. No, that sounds human. The audience applauds loudly. Hugh continues before Joy interrupts again. The version of me sitting with close friends isn't identical to the version sitting on live television in front of millions of people. That doesn't mean either version is fake. The audience claps harder now. Even some people who had supported Joy earlier seem to be nodding. Joy responds more quietly this time. But audiences want authenticity. Hugh nods. Absolutely. But authenticity doesn't mean exposing every private thought or emotion publicly. One co-host points toward Hugh. That's actually a really important distinction. Joy sighs. Maybe. But audiences also get tired of media training. Hugh smiles slightly. Sometimes media training is just learning not to turn every disagreement into a disaster. The audience laughs and applauds again. Joy smirks. You think this is a disaster? Hugh looks around the table playfully. I think your producers probably do. The entire audience bursts into laughter. Even Joy laughs at that one. A producer off camera can actually be heard saying, "He's not wrong." That makes the crowd laugh even harder. One of the co-hosts wipes tears from laughing while saying, "Okay, now this feels real again." Joy shakes her head smiling, but the competitive edge is still there. You know what's annoying? You're very good at staying calm. Hugh shrugs lightly. Getting angry on live TV rarely improves anything. Joy responds quickly. Sometimes emotion reveals truth. Hugh nods. And sometimes, emotion gets weaponized. That line changes the energy again instantly. The audience quiets noticeably. Joy looks at him carefully. What do you mean by that? Hugh answers slowly. I think modern media sometimes encourages emotional explosions because they spread faster than thoughtful conversations. One host nods immediately. That's absolutely true online. Joy counters, but audiences respond to honesty. Hugh agrees. Yes, but outrage and honesty aren't always the same thing. The audience applauds again. Joy tilts her head. You really came ready for a debate today. Hugh laughs softly. Honestly, I came ready to talk about a movie. That gets another huge audience laugh. One co-host jokingly says, at this point nobody even remembers the movie title. The audience erupts laughing again. Joy smiles despite herself. Okay, fair enough. For the first time since the argument started, the atmosphere loosens a little naturally instead of awkwardly. But then Joy asks one final question that instantly tightens the room again. Can I ask you something honestly? Hugh nods. Sure. Joy looks directly at him. Did you decide before coming here that you were going to push back against me specifically? The audience goes completely silent. Even the other hosts stop moving. Hugh looks genuinely surprised by the question. No, he answers calmly. Why would I? Joy shrugs slightly. Because you seemed ready. Hugh thinks for a moment before speaking. I think I reacted to the tone of the conversation, not the person. Joy watches him carefully. So it wasn't personal? Hugh answers honestly. I don't know you personally well enough for it to be personal. The audience reacts loudly again. One host whispers. That was smoother than I expected. Joy lets out a surprised laugh. Okay, that was good. Hugh smiles. Thank you. Joy nods slowly but keeps pressing. But you did think some of my questions crossed a line. Hugh answers directly now. Yes. The audience reacts instantly. Joy blinks, almost surprised he answered so bluntly. You do. Hugh nods. I think challenging someone is fine. But when questions start carrying assumptions inside them, it changes the conversation. The room becomes quiet again. Joy asks carefully, what assumption bothered you most? Hugh pauses before answering. The assumption that disagreement automatically means dishonesty, or that privacy means deception. The audience applauds again, though more thoughtfully this time. One co-host nods slowly. That's actually a meaningful point. Joy looks down briefly before responding. I can see that. That small moment surprises the audience almost as much as the argument itself. Hugh notices it too and softens slightly. And for what it's worth, he says calmly, I understand why tough questions matter. Public figures shouldn't live in a bubble. Joy looks back at him. But, Hugh smiles faintly. But there's a difference between accountability and trying to provoke someone into a viral moment. The audience erupts once more. Joy laughs while shaking her head. You really love that phrase. Hugh grins. Because it's true. One host suddenly points toward the countdown clock off camera. Guys, we literally have less than 2 minutes before break. The audience groans loudly. Joy laughs. This is the fastest segment we've ever done. Hugh smiles. Or the longest. The crowd laughs again as the tension finally begins easing slightly. But everyone can still feel the conversation isn't completely over yet. One of the producers off camera starts signaling aggressively that the segment needs to wrap, but the energy inside the studio still feels tense. Even though the conversation has softened slightly, the audience can tell everybody at the table is still thinking about what was said. Some people are clapping, others are whispering to each other, and a few audience members are already checking their phones because clips from the interview are beginning to spread online in real time. One host laughs nervously while looking around the table. I feel like we all survived something. The audience bursts into laughter. Joy leans back in her chair, shaking her head. You know what's funny? This probably becomes a bigger story than the movie itself. Hugh smiles. That would be unfortunate for the studio. Another host jumps in jokingly. Some executive is panicking right now. The audience laughs again. For the first time in nearly 20 minutes, the mood feels lighter naturally instead of forced. Even Joy looks more relaxed now, though the competitive energy between her and Hugh is still obvious. Joy turns toward Hugh again. All right, let me ask this before we finish. Do moments like this bother you after the cameras stop rolling? Hugh thinks for a second before answering honestly. Sometimes, yeah. The audience quiets immediately. He continues calmly. Not because disagreement bothers me. I actually think disagreement can be healthy. But I think people forget there are real human beings sitting at these tables. The audience applauds softly. Joy listens carefully this time without interrupting. Hugh keeps going. After interviews end, everybody goes online. Suddenly there are clips, headlines, opinions, insults, praise, arguments. And most of the time people only see 30 seconds instead of the entire conversation. One co-host nods. That part is definitely true. Hugh gestures lightly toward the audience. Conversations become fragmented. One expression becomes a meme. One sentence becomes the whole narrative. Joy responds more thoughtfully now. But that's modern television. Hugh nods. I know. Doesn't mean it's healthy. The audience claps again. Joy smiles slightly. You really have been thinking about this a lot. Hugh laughs softly. Probably too much. One host jumps in. I think everybody thinks about it now. Even regular people feel pressure online. That comment shifts the discussion into something calmer and more reflective. Hugh agrees. Exactly. Public pressure used to mostly affect celebrities and politicians. Now everybody deals with judgment constantly. Joy nods slowly. Social media changed everything. Hugh smiles faintly, including interviews. The audience laughs quietly. Another co-host turns toward Joy. To be fair, I think both of you made good points today. Joy immediately jokes, diplomatic answer. The crowd laughs again. The host shrugs dramatically. I'm trying to survive this segment. Hugh laughs hard at that. Even Joy smiles more openly now. Honestly, I respect that he pushed back. The audience reacts with surprise. One host immediately says, Wow, growth. Everybody laughs again. Joy points toward the audience. Don't get too excited. Hugh smiles. For what it's worth, I respect direct conversations too. Joy raises an eyebrow. Even when they annoy you? Hugh laughs. Especially then. That line gets a warm reaction from the audience. For the first time since the tension started, the room genuinely feels balanced again. One producer off-camera finally announces they have 1 minute left before commercial break. A host quickly says, Okay, before we go, can we at least mention the movie one more time so the studio doesn't ban us forever? The audience erupts laughing. Hugh jokingly covers his face. Please. I'm begging you. Joy laughs too. All right, fair enough. The conversation briefly returns to the film itself. Hugh talks about working with the cast, training for action scenes, and why the story mattered to him personally. The audience listens closely, but even now there's still an unusual energy in the room because everybody knows they just witnessed something far more intense than a normal celebrity interview. As the segment wraps up, the hosts thank Hugh for coming on the show. But before the cameras cut away, Joy says one final thing. Even though we argued a little, I appreciate that you didn't give robotic answers. The audience reacts softly. Hugh smiles genuinely this time. I appreciate that you asked real questions. Joy laughs. Careful, people online might think we like each other now. The audience laughs loudly. Hugh grins. That would ruin the narrative. Even Joy laughs hard at that. The crowd applauds as the cameras begin pulling back and the show heads toward commercial break. But what nobody at the table realizes yet is that the conversation is already exploding online. Within minutes, clips from the interview begin spreading across social media platforms. Viewers start debating who won the exchange while hashtags connected to both Hugh and Joy begin trending. Some people praise Hugh for staying calm under pressure, while others defend Joy for refusing to hold back during the interview. One viral post says, Hugh Jackman just gave a masterclass in staying composed during a hostile interview. Another trending comment says, Joy Behar asked the questions everybody else was too afraid to ask. Soon entire clips of the argument start appearing everywhere online. People replay Hugh's line about negativity pretending to be authenticity millions of times. Reaction channels upload breakdown videos within hours. Media websites publish headlines calling it one of the most uncomfortable daytime television moments of the year. Backstage after the show, reports begin circulating that producers were shocked by how intense the segment became. According to audience members leaving the studio, people were still debating the conversation in the hallways long after filming ended. One audience member says, "At first it felt awkward, but then it turned into a real discussion about media and celebrity culture." Another says, "You could tell neither of them expected it to go that far." Even other television personalities begin reacting online later that evening. Some praise Joy for being fearless. Others praise Hugh for refusing to lose his composure. And naturally, the internet immediately splits into sides. Talk shows across the next several days start discussing the interview too. Some commentators argue the exchange represented everything wrong with modern television: constant conflict, viral moments, and pressure for confrontation. Others argue it was refreshing to see an unscripted conversation where both people genuinely challenged each other instead of sticking to safe celebrity promotion. Meanwhile, clips continue gaining millions of views. One particular moment becomes especially viral, when Hugh says, "Maybe audiences are tired of negativity pretending to be authenticity." People begin reposting it everywhere. Some viewers call it the perfect description of modern media culture. Others accuse Hugh of trying to avoid criticism behind polished language. The debate keeps growing larger. A few days later, during another episode of the show, Joy briefly references the interview again. She jokes, "Apparently I survived my battle with Wolverine." The audience laughs loudly. Meanwhile, Hugh is later asked about the moment during another interview. Instead of criticizing Joy personally, he simply says, "Live television creates emotional conversations sometimes. I think people are passionate right now." That answer only adds more fuel online because viewers interpret it in completely different ways. Some say he handled the situation perfectly. Others say he dodged accountability again. But regardless of opinion, one thing becomes undeniable: people cannot stop talking about the interview. Days later, clips are still circulating everywhere. Fans continue debating who crossed the line first, who handled the pressure better, and whether modern talk shows care more about real discussion or viral conflict. And maybe that's exactly why the moment resonated with so many people. Because underneath the tension, sarcasm, interruptions, applause, and awkward silence, the conversation accidentally touched on something bigger than celebrity gossip. It became a debate about modern media itself, about outrage, about authenticity, about performance, and about whether real conversations can still exist once cameras, clips, and social media reactions become part of every interaction. The audience inside the studio originally expected a routine celebrity appearance. Instead, they witnessed one of the most talked about talk show confrontations of the year. And now we want to hear from you. Who do you think handled the conversation better? Was Joy Behar asking necessary tough questions? Or did Hugh Jackman successfully shut down a conversation that became more about provocation than discussion? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to Talk Show Fallout for more real talk show stories.